All right, strap in. This is going to be fun. So I'm the CEO, co-founder of TechShop. I also happen to be a former Green Beret. It's a little while ago. And so when I talk about a revolution, I'm actually being very, very specific. I believe we are in the middle of what may turn out to be the most powerful revolution we've seen in human history, literally. And I'll unpack that over time. And so here's the plug, blatant plug. Buy the book, buy it often, give me 5 stars. My publisher makes me do that. So I want this to be a little interactive. And so I'm gonna ask you to practice something here real quick, and it'll make more sense a little bit later. But as a Green Beret, one of the favorite sounds we have is when we're out on the bombing range, we hear these big things and they go boom. And every revolution needs lots of booms. And so I'm gonna ask you to participate with me. We're gonna all say boom on the count of 3. And then throughout the presentation, there'll be some things that I say and talk about and uncover, and you're just gonna wanna say boom, and that's okay, and we'll participate together. So real quick, now I know it's early, but I wanna hear this. 1, 2, 3, boom! Well, let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, boom! All right, let's get started. So, how many of you been to TechShop? Has anybody? We've got a few. So I'm going to unpack that. But the arc here is I'm going to describe my experience at TechShop. Then I'm going to describe what's happening in the maker movement kind of writ large. And then as a Green Beret, one of my objectives here is to radicalize you. So I'm from San Francisco, so it's an okay term there. Maybe not so much here. But when you're trying to push a revolution, you need people to change their mental models. You need people to change their activity sets. And to do that, you have to be inspiring, and you have to have great stories, and you actually have to radicalize people. Now, not necessarily in the shoot 'em up, bang, bang kind of way, but you've got to try to move people from where they are to where they need to be in order to participate in the coming revolution. And so I am serious. I'm going to try to help radicalize you today, and I'm going to give you a challenge at the end of this. It's not going to be a big challenge. It's not going to be scary. But if you follow through with it and you encourage your friends and family to, you will find yourself in a different place in January than you are today. And that is the objective, is to try to radicalize you, get you engaged, become foot soldiers in the coming revolution. All right, let's go. So the TechShop platform we're a membership-based, do-it-yourself fabrication studio. So membership-based means it's like a gymnasium. It's like 24-hour fitness for geeks, or Kinko's on steroids. You join and you come and hang out. You hang out for 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, every day, whatever. Do it yourself. We do not manufacture for you. We give you access to our tools for you to come in and play. It's very much DIY. And it's a machine shop and a whole bunch of other stuff, and I'll go through that here in a minute. Each tech shop is 15 to 20,000 square feet. And no, you can't make it smaller, and there are some reasons for that. We like to say it's every tool that you need, and I'll go through that in a minute. It's $125 a month. Now, I equate that to a really bad Starbucks addiction. Right, about $4 a day. Now, we charge by the month, not by the day. But if you can afford $4 a day for your Starbucks addiction, then you can afford to join TechShop with all the tools you need to make anything. We teach hundreds of classes each month at every location. How to weld. And we do it slightly differently than like a college or a tech school does it. We do it more like your dad or your mom would do it. So let's say you're 8 years old and you went to your dad and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to learn how to weld." And so what he would do is he would take you down to the garage, pull out the welding machine, show you how to operate it himself, hand you the tools, watch you do it twice, and then go back inside and watch television. We do exactly the same thing. What could possibly go wrong? Obviously, safety is a huge issue, but it's DIY. We teach you how to operate the machine safely and then let you loose. And over a very short period of time, actually, you can start doing some really amazing things. We also do corporate events because we have the space and it's a lot of fun. And these corporate events rock, lasers and beer, welding and wine, water jet and whiskey. I need a boom. 1, 2, 3, boom! We also do a sumo robot build competition that is just absolutely amazing. Our mission is to help drive global innovation by engaging, enabling, and empowering people to build their dreams. The engaging piece is we consider ourselves a transformative retailer, a transformative experience-based retailer. We're not just a machine shop where people can come in and play with tools. The objective is to transform people's lives by giving them access to tools and then helping them achieve their dreams. And because we're a transformative retailer, we do things a little bit different. We have glass everywhere so that you can see who's on site. And you can imagine my facilities guy when I told him that I was going to put great big huge sheets of glass right next to the mill and the lathe and the welding machines and the table saw. He wasn't thrilled. We also have Lexan just in case something gets loose. But the point is that we're trying to build an experience, and it's hard to have an experience by yourself in a little cave. You want to have open space. You want to have clear lines of sight. You want to see the activity that's going on around. You want our dream consultants to be able to see what it is that you are doing. We call them dream consultants, not facilities people, because they are actually helping people build their dreams. And it's actually kind of cool. So that's the engaging piece. The enabling piece is kind of the platform, the operating system, and our staff. But the empowerment piece happens when you get 500 people in the community showing up on probably 4 or 5 times a week. So below 500, what we discovered is below 500 members, people would come to the space because they had to get their project done. Over 500, people came to the space because they wanted to get their project done. And so it's weird, at 400 people, we'd have 10 or 15 show up at any one time. There'd be about 15 people. At like 550 people, we'd have 50 to 75 people showing up all the time. And that is magic. The San Francisco location now has 1,200 members. And on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday afternoon, early evening, you'd saddle up next to one of our dream consultants and ask, who's here right now? Because you can't tell, right? You can't tell anymore. And he'll go around, and this is literally what he did this one evening. He goes, that guy over there is a mechanical engineering professor at Stanford. That one's architectural engineering professor at Berkeley. That guy's at Frog Design. That woman's from IDEO. Those 2 are from Method. They're here on our corporate membership. That's from Twitter. That's from Square. That's from Facebook. That's one of the lead designers at Apple. HP, Cisco. Those 3 are a venture-backed startup. That team over there is working on a 3D printing company. They've already sold 1,000 units. Those 2 people are art folks, and we have our Burning Man contingent. You've heard of Burning Man? We're in San Francisco. Trust me, they've got a big Burning Man contingent. It involves lots of propane and fire. But can you imagine hanging out in a space like that where you're bouncing off the most creative minds in the city on a daily basis? That is power. And then we insert our dream consultants in there, and their job is to introduce you to those people when your project needs it. So if you're having some kind of an issue that we can't help you solve, but there's somebody in the community that can, once you get over those 500 members, there is a very high probability that whatever problem you're currently facing on your project can be solved by somebody on site right now. And that is magic. So let me go through, we have a big OS system. I'm going to skip that. This is actually pretty important. If you're going to operate a place with 1,400 members, you kind of need to know who's on site, whether or not they've taken the right class, how many hours they've used a particular machine so they don't overuse and extend their welcome. It's a pretty critical piece. But here's what we've got, machine tools. So mills and lathes, standard mills and lathes. What's fascinating here is this machine about 25 years ago with this digital readout was about $150,000. So when this is called a DRO, digital readout, When those first came out, they were a $100,000 add-on to a mill or a lathe. Now, so a former Train general manager from GE's Train division was telling me about when he outfitted the entire operation with them. He had like 30 mills and 30 lathes and spent like $6 million outfitting them with DROs. The machine itself used to be about $50,000, and then the Japanese came along and kind of wiped out the tooling industry in the US, and then the Chinese came in behind them, and then Moore's Law destroyed the cost of that thing. So call it 20 years ago, this was a $150,000 setup. We're getting them for $8,000. Holy cow, what just happened to the Industrial Revolution? We had revolutions, people died because they lost access to the tools of production. We call it capitalism because they were so expensive, they took a lot of capital. This and the lathe, which I think is the next photo, those were the tools of the Industrial Revolution. These drove everything that we know about the Industrial Revolution. By the way, we're getting that one for $5,000. So for $12,000, you can own the two tools that drove the entire Industrial Revolution. And then the killer is we then resell that for $125 a month. 1, 2, 3, boom. Yeah, what happens when you reduce the cost of access to the tools of the Industrial Revolution by an excess of 99%? We'll show you in a little bit. The other revolution that's happening, this is just as important. So this is a computer numerically controlled mill. It's just like the old mills, except now it's computer controlled. The bad news on the old mills is you actually still need to know what you're doing. You actually have to dial, run the dials and kind of feel how the bit's doing. You need to know your geometry, at least a little bit, so you can follow the orders. This is computer numerically controlled. You don't have to do that anymore. So as long as you've got a usable file, and it takes a little bit of work to get there, but as long as you've got a usable file, basically your job is to hover over that red button, and if something goes wrong, you hit it. That's it. I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but we routinely teach people how to use this tool in 6 hours. 3-hour introduction to computer numerically controlled concepts, 3 hours on the machine itself. We then give you a free license to Inventor, which takes more than 3 hours to learn, but then you play with the software. If you learn how to work in the three-dimensional modeling, like if you're big into World of Warcraft, you're actually already doing 3D modeling, you can export those files, run them through a RIP program, and then actually start manufacturing things here. We had one company who came in a period of about 3 weeks. They had this idea for a safety lock for children for light sockets. These guys were not mechanical engineers. They were designers by training. So they came in, they took the Inventor class, they took the 2 classes here, they then took the injection molding class, and so they did the design on the computers, which they knew how to do because they were designers. They then used that design with a CNC machine to mill their mold out, polished it up, took the injection molding class, and injection molded their samples. And in their 4th week, they went to a trade show and sold 50,000 units to Osh. They were on the Walmart shelves within 12 months. They did not go to 4 years of mechanical engineering school. They went through 12 hours of classes at TechShop and launched a multi-million-dollar business not 6 weeks later. 1, 2, 3, boom, yeah. And so this is really the magic, that being able to use the computer to run things in the wood area, the plastic area, the laser cutter, the water jet, all the mills and lathes, that is truly transformative. I believe that our children, my dad told me at one point, you got to take the typing class because computers are coming and you're going to have to know how to type. And so I was I was the only guy in the class, with 30 girls who thought they might want to be secretaries. They're probably all programming HTML5, by the way. And he was right. Now everybody does. It's lingua franca. You can't even get into junior high without being able to do like PowerPoint now, right? I believe within 20 years, you're not going to be able to get into junior high without being able to model things, manipulate them in 3D. It's just going to be what you do. And if you can do that, with a couple extra hours of training, you can run the tools of the Industrial Revolution. Holy cow. Oh yeah, and this was a $250,000 machine. Again, the software seat from Siemens was $100,000. We're getting it drop shipped, installed for 20 grand. Complete metal shop, so sheet metal, woodworking, welding. This is a great date night. Learning how to weld. Oh, it's fabulous. It really is. It's we see them all the time. This is our sexy beast. Can't you tell? She looks awesome. That will cut through 5 inches thick of anything on the planet. And it's computer numerically controlled, so we can teach you how to use it in 2 hours. I mean, so this cuts through titanium. You can put if you can get it up there, a 4x8 sheet, 5 inches thick of anything in the world. Titanium, stainless steel, carbon fiber, cows, pigs, your mother-in-law. I mean, it cuts through everything. We use it. We use it to cut through pumpkins to do this incredibly high-resolution pumpkin faces for Halloween. It's a remarkable tool. Water jet and whiskey is also a phenomenal event. If you're ever have your team in our area, you got to come hang out. Complete woodworking shop. This one's important. This is called a saw stop. It's a machine that won't let you cut your finger off. It's got a little capacitor in there. When your finger comes into contact with the blade, the capacitor blows. The piston throws an aluminum block into the blade within 20 milliseconds, and it stops the blade. You may get a little nick on your finger. I still say you're going to the hospital, having realized you almost just cut your finger off. And then I think in the back, or maybe, yeah, there's a computer numerically controlled router in the back. We have 2 of those in each of the locations. Of course, wood lathes, miter boxes, sanders, a complete woodworking setup. Plastics lab. This is a vacuum form machine, and then there's that injection molder. Again, lots of businesses have been launched off that one. The vacuum form machine is actually an incredibly useful tool. You can use the CNC wood router on foam core to do a really quick design in a couple hours, slap it on the form tech, and bang, you've got a mold. Now here's the weird thing. We've got 8 locations now across the U.S. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Every location we open, I swear the very first project on this thing is a stormtrooper outfit. There is serious unmet demand for stormtrooper outfits in the United States. Who knew? Complete textiles lab. This was the surprise for me. When I came in and saw TechShop for the first time, when I came across and I saw the textiles, I knew I was working with somebody different. Jim Newton, the founder, came up with the whole TechShop concept. So we have a consumer grade sewers, sergers, 12-foot wide arm quilting machine. I can turn you into a quilting maniac in about 2.5 hours. You can do all kinds of fun stuff with that, vinyl cutter, and so forth. The way Jim outfitted TechShop was, well, he was the science advisor on Mythbusters in season 3, before they put him out in front of the cameras, before Emma Hara took over the role. And M5, which is the company that does Mythbusters, has 2 full-blown prototyping shops in downtown San Francisco, because they came out of the Hollywood movie industry and had to have all the tools. So Jim had access to all these amazing tools for a full year while he was there. Then part-time he was teaching a robotics class, actually a combat robotics class at a junior college, how to build small combats that attack one another. What a great job. He had a good year, right? Mythbusters during the day, combat robots at night. Life is good. And then at the end of that year, he went back and started working on a software startup that he'd been working on, and he lost access to the tools. And he said, I need a garage. I need a big garage. And he lived in the Bay Area, and they're very expensive, and then he couldn't afford all the equipment. So he came up with this idea, I wonder if I got this equipment, if other people would show up. But here was the real genius. He then took his inventor's notebook, and he opened it up, And he went through every single one of the 200 new product ideas that he had documented, and went through and said, what are all of the tools I need to go from the very beginning all the way to the prototype? And that became the minimum set. And that's where the textiles came in. And that's why these things are so big, is because if you don't have all of the tools, then your project is going to come to a screeching halt when you get to that one tool that you don't have. And now you're going to have to go out into dysphoria and try to find somebody that will do a prototype for you and so forth. And it turns out that's really expensive. And we'll talk some more about that. So the textiles area was my first hint that Jim was doing something differently. Now, most places get started, they go, I've got $10,000, so I'm going to buy this. Jim said, no, what are all the tools I need to have a fully functioning space that I can do anything from the Industrial Revolution? Set the tool sets out, and then that became the minimum sets. Pretty cool. And textiles are really cool. Software, we've got a great relationship with Autodesk. Every single one of the computers there has like a $20,000 to $25,000 software load. It's almost $800,000 in software per location. You also get a free copy of Inventor and a subsidized class of Inventor from Autodesk when you become a member. This is a $5,000 software package that you get free when you sign up for your $125 a month. As well as an introductory class. We just announced a deal with National Instruments, which has LabVIEW and MyRio and MyDAC. These are amazing tools for the Internet of Things and robotics that make it relatively easy to actually manipulate and manage them. So every computer here has about a $30,000 software load on it, and the software is the magic sauce that gets you into using the computer-controlled tools. So it's a pretty critical component. Of course, we have 3D printers. We have one HD 3000, and then we have 3D printer startups in all of our locations. So not only do we have like the MakerBots, we also often have a local team as well. Laser cutters, we call this our gateway drug. Again, I'm from San Francisco. So a good gateway drug. I'm sure you've thought about this, right? You're trying to drive sales, and you need to do some sampling to get people excited about your platform. You want something that is easy to use, incredibly powerful, and extremely addictive. That's what a pusher is looking for. Hey, I'm a pusher. The laser cutter does that in spades. It is a remarkable tool. If you can download something off the internet and put it in Corel Draw, you can use the laser cutter. And it'll cut wood, cut plastic, cut cardboard, cut leather, cut fabric. It'll etch all of those. It'll etch steel. It'll etch glass. And I'll talk some later. We have people who accidentally launch businesses after taking this one class. $60 class, and within weeks, they've got a business that they had no idea that they were going to have. I'll talk about two of them in a bit, but I'll talk about the most heartwarming one right now because I don't have a photo of them. I was actually kind of pissed because I read about this in VentureBeat after it all happened. It's like, you'd think my team would let me know when stuff like this is going on. So there was a homeless guy in San Francisco. Kind of fallen through the cracks. He was actually a coder by training, lived in, I think it was Tucson, left his wife and kids temporarily in Tucson to come to San Francisco to land a new coding job. This is right after the Great Recession. Couldn't find a job right away, needed money, took a job at Starbucks. Now you have a full-time job. While you're looking for a job, it becomes really difficult. Even coding jobs were a little hard to come by then. Then he develops a small medical problem. He's shipping all his money home to keep his wife and kids fed. He ends up living in his car. His car gets booted. It gets taken from him, and he ends up in a shelter. Tough story. Fixes his medical problem. I don't know what it was. He never disclosed, but kind of got through that, whatever it was. But he's still living in a homeless shelter in San Francisco. And so one evening, a couple of guys come in and they start talking about, hey, we just did this tour at this amazing place, but it's kind of not for us, and they throw the brochure in the trash. So he literally pulls the brochure out of the trash, says, this is interesting, I might be able to do this, and then comes in the next day at 9 o'clock and gets a free tour. That's how we advertise. You have to come visit these things. Even though I'm going to spend an hour with you, trust me, it is way more powerful than you can even comprehend. You have to go experience it physically to really get a feel for it. So he does the tour, and we had a special going. If you'd never been a member, you could get a full month and a free class for $50. So he uses his last $50 to buy a membership and take the laser cutter class. So he takes a class that night, and the next day he comes in, he books 2 hours on the laser cutter, comes in, goes into the trash can because he can't afford material, pulls some material out, does a little design, takes it out on the street and sells it. And he just iterates for weeks. He's really learning how to use the laser cutter. Quickly, other members realize this guy's got some skills that they could use, and they need some help, and they're doing little production runs, and so they hire him out at like $25 to $30 an hour to start doing production runs. We discover that he's doing that. I didn't. Our team discovers that he's doing a really good job. We hire him as an instructor. Within about 3 months, he manages to convince a member to help buy him a laser cutter so that he can go into laser cutter production. Within about a year, he completely reboots his life. His wife and kids moved to San Francisco. He runs a small company. He's got 3 or 4 employees. For $50. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, boom. It is a gateway drug. It's a remarkable tool. Of course, large project bay, if you want to do like a bicycle conversion, electric conversion, or an urban assault vehicle. But it's not about the tools, right? I got to come back to that. It is not about the tools. It's about the people that show up and how they help one another build their dreams. That's the target. The target is not to build a makerspace for a bunch of geeks to hang out. The target is not to have a STEM education platform, which I absolutely love, but that's not what our mission is. Our mission is to help drive global innovation. We love the STEM programs that come through. We embrace them. We do a lot of them. I love Neil Gershenfeld. I love the Fab Labs. They're absolutely phenomenal platforms. They're great feeders in getting people addicted to making things so they become members. But our objective is to get 500 people activated in a community that are routinely coming together to make things. And when that happens, magic actually happens. We have a lot of partnerships. I'm going to skip through that. We have a lot of partnerships, and that's kind of the only way this thing works at the moment. So I'll talk about the Ford membership. This is pretty cool. So we got a call from Bill Coughlin, who's the president of Ford Global Technologies, right out of the blue. There was a New York Times article that came out. It was like 5 years ago. So I got a little note that said, Bill from Ford called. Wasn't that Bill. It was a different Bill. And so I call him back, and I'll give you the short version of it. He eventually says, no, we're just going to pay you to come. I know, he said, we want you to come to Detroit. We said, no. And he says, no, really, we want you to come. And I said, really, no, we're not coming to Detroit. I mean, we're not in LA, we're not in Chicago, we're not in Atlanta, we're not in New York, and we're still not in those cities, by the way. And he says, no, we'll pay you. It's like, okay. And then eventually we got to, Bill, why are you doing this? This is expensive. This is millions of dollars that you're essentially gifting to the Ford community and the Detroit community. Why are you doing this? And he says, okay, we have 3 objectives here. Our first objective is to increase high-quality, patentable ideas coming in to the Ford office. And that's the thing that he ran. He ran the patent office, the licensing office, actually controls the blue Ford Oval. So if we can increase that 15%, I mean, this is a Fortune 10 company. If we can increase our patents by 15%, that's worth millions of dollars to us, potentially hundreds of millions. 2, it'd be really wickedly cool if an idea came from outside of our research and development and product management groups and made it onto an automobile. And he says, I don't care whether it comes out of this location or one of your other locations, because we're going to network them all together. But if we can get an idea to come out of it and actually make it onto the automobile, that's worth potentially tens of millions of dollars. Then thirdly, if we can engage the research and development community here and get them to be a little more excited about open innovation, and if we can get the broader Ford community to get excited about making things, that would be a huge win. So those were the three. Then I'm going to describe the problem set just a little more. So he went on and said, you know, Mark, we have 10,000 mechanical engineers within a 30-mile radius of where we're sitting right now, just Ford alone. Like, wow, I didn't know that. He says, yeah, and actually half of them are not in engineering anymore. They're in marketing, customer support, sales, finance. He says, here's why. It's like we only recruit from the top 20 universities, mechanical engineering universities. And just imagine, you know, these kids got into Lincoln Logs and building blocks and blah, 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 took all the hard classes in high school and college, finally get to Ford, and what they want to do is make automobiles, and we drop them down, and you know, they're working on the left turn blinker cable harness connectors for 3 years. Yeah, that's why you became a mechanical engineer, right? And so then they pop their head up over the cube and they see the marketing people flying off to shoot commercials in Hawaii and London and Paris, and they're going, you know, I think I want to go over there. And they lose. About half of them move on. But they still have the engineering talent, and now they've got 20 years automotive experience. It's like, how do I engage those engineers in my patent process? Because I know they've got the capability. The next thing, we're a traditional company, and I did one of these when I was at Avery Dennison. We have a stage-gated new product development process, and you do those because they're risk-weighted adjusted at each of the stages. As you go through them, the risks go up higher, and there's a lot more money. But just getting through the first stage, historically, is anywhere between $500,000 to $2 million. And when you're talking about a $2 million spend to get to a prototype, you put a bunch of white guys in white hair, MBA folks, sometimes the women are there, but often it's not, in a room, and then they bless or deny the project. So everybody does that. You have to, because it's so expensive. He says, but this whole maker thing and the whole open innovation thing, Mark, is suggesting that there's another route. And so I'm intrigued with whether or not we may actually get some kind of a project outside of this process that will be developed by an independent inventor, either at TechShop or one. So, wow. That's actually every manufacturing company. You know, I met the folks at GE, they have the same issue. I met the folks at BMW. People, they come in engineering and they get a little bit disillusioned because they don't get to play with the tools, and then they move on. This is, you know, I won't name the name, but there's a manufacturer who the R&D community is like, you know, come on, guys. We have big boy tools. 12-axis mills, $1 million laser sintering machines. Those are toys. What can you possibly do with a bunch of toys? It's like, you know what? These toys will get you to a prototype, one. And two, because they're so cheap, your people don't need permission. You want to get on those big boy tools? You need permission. You got to fire up the SAP, Ariba, such and such. You got to spend a couple $1,000s. You got to have an expense report. You got to have that budget lined up the year before. It's hard to get access to those tools. And so it turned out, it didn't take them very long. It was like within 6 months, we had the senior team coming back through. And again, they were still saying, you know, I'm still not a believer. It's like, well, let's see what's going on. Literally, we came around the corner, and there was one of their engineers on a bench working on one of their projects, flying their logo. It was pretty cool. So it turns out you can invent out of marketing and customer service. And the reason you can is because the costs are so much lower than they used to be. So here were the results from Ford. It's unbelievable. First, they will tell you flat out that the culture has shifted. I mean, it is a lot of fun to see the marketing team from Ford and the engineering team from Ford, and actually the CEO and their chief futurist on site in our location in Detroit with 300 of the top journalists doing welding and wine and water jet and whiskey. Trust me, these journalists have never been given that kind of an experience, and they go back and they write all about Ford, and it's pretty fun. They have succeeded in finding a product that will eventually work its way on the automobile. So that second objective has been achieved, and it did come out of marketing. This was not a stage-gated new product development process. This guy did not have any permission. He just had an idea, was a mechanical engineer, came in, built the prototype. They're getting a patent on it, and it's working its way onto the Ford platform. It'll actually probably go on every single one of their cars. Out of marketing. 1, 2, 3, boom. But here's the big payoff. Again, you got to think, this is a Fortune 10 company. One of their core competitive advantages is intellectual property. A 15% increase would get you in front of the board. I mean, you're going to be written up in the annual report. You're going to get access. You already had access to the CEO, but you'll go chat with the board. In 2 years, they had a 100% increase in high-quality patentable ideas coming from the Ford employee base into their office. He had to hire dozens of attorneys to be able to deal with the patent flow that is being created by the cognitive surplus that was already embedded inside of Ford. What is it worth to a company to unleash the cognitive surplus that they're sitting on right now? Tens of billions, hundreds of billions globally? 1, 2, 3, boom. So that's Ford experience. We've now got relationships with Intel, BMW, GE, Lowe's, ASU, DARPA, VA. We're looking for like 12 to 15 more to help us push this out across the world. I just kind of want to point out, so we have a manufacturer there, kind of there. We have, this was a big deal. Arizona State University opened, actually tomorrow is our 1-year anniversary at ASU. It's a 40,000 square foot innovation center. 20,000 is like classrooms and workspace and so forth, and then 20,000 for us. And what happened was Jim Newton, our founder, was on a panel with Mitzi Montoya, and Mitzi was describing, it was like they kept coming down the line. Mitzi said, I'm doing this open innovation center. The city of Chandler has given us a building. They're building the entire thing out for us to try to get an outpost for ASU down in Chandler. And we're going to put in a makerspace, and it's going to have some laser cutters and 3D printers and so forth. And then Jim stood up and did this deck, and Mitzi was like, I want yours. What's it going to cost? And it turned out it was better, faster, and cheaper. It was going to be cheaper than what they were going to do. We were going to be able to stand it up faster, and it was going to be, and this is the real key, because her attorneys were not going to allow it to be open to the community because of the potential liability at ASU. And so this place was going to be fallow like 80% of the time. Be open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. We're open 9 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week, and it's open to the entire community. So now their students get to hang out with folks from the Chandler community, which includes Intel and General Dynamics and Boeing and Honeywell and amazing artist community. And it becomes a STEM platform for junior high, elementary, and high schoolers to come in and experience. And it turns into a on-ramp for ASU engineering students. Within 2 weeks of making the announcement that we were collaborating to bring a tech shop to Chandler, the recruiting office called Mitzi and asked, what are you doing? And she says, well, what do you mean? Well, what's this tech shop thing? So, it's a makerspace company that we're collaborating with. Could you explain that a little better to me? And she said, well, why? We're getting early commits from students that we never used to be able to attract. And they're telling us that the reason is because we have a tech shop. And here in the recruiting office, we don't know what that is. Boom, yeah. This is cool. We started with 300 members at ASU. They had so much fun that first year. They announced just this about a month ago. If you're a student at ASU in Arizona, you get an automatic free membership to TechShop. 73,000 students just got access. So remarkable. And we're leveraging that. I can only name one name. We're going to St. Louis. We've done a deal with Technical University in Munich with their school. We've done a deal with Dublin City University, and we're in active negotiations with 3 other universities here in the United States. And then we do work with the government, the DARPA VA. I love this as a former vet. The VA funded 1,000 memberships for GIs to come have a full year at TechShop and a $350 class voucher. And then GE doubled down. and bought another 500. So we have about 1,500 vets now in the platform that are using it to launch businesses, to actually, in some instances, overcome some PTSD, because you're in a community setting, you've got your hands busy, you're getting to meet folks. It's actually it was a great platform, great deal. So the future's here. A lot of people ask me, Mark, is this maker revolution like real? I mean, you talk in those terms, and I get that you like to hype because that's kind of your job. But is there anything of significance that's happened yet? I mean, I've been to the Maker Faire, and I've seen the burners with their, with the explosions, and I saw the crafts, and teaching kids how to solder is cute. But apart from cute and crafts and crazies, what's going on? So this was the President of the United States earlier this year at our location in Pittsburgh, and I gotta love his advanced team. That is not normally there, but his advanced team came in and said, he's gonna be standing here, the cameras are gonna be right there, and there's like a blank wall. Can you put your logo up there? We made that sign. It took a couple hours, but we made that sign for that event. It was pretty cool. And then the White House did the Maker Faire. But here's what's been happening. It's now been probably 18 months, right? So MakerBot. Now I love Bree Pettis. I mean, this is a remarkable story. MakerBot is like the #1 consumer grade 3D printer that's launched. It's now 6 years. 6 years ago, right now, Bree was on break from his junior high art teaching career in Portland. 6 years ago, Bree was an art teacher. He just had a $600 million exit. 1, 2, 3, boom. From art to capitalist in 5 short years. He's a truly remarkable guy, built a remarkable company. 600 million will usually get attention on Wall Street, so people are starting to pay attention. Autodesk, we helped Autodesk get introduced to the maker movement. Carl Bass is an Uber maker himself, just a phenomenal CEO. His kids are in Little League, and so each season he lathes every child their own baseball bat and laser etches the kid's name and number and team on the end of it. Their CTO teaches the robotics class at the local high school. The chief technology officer, Kowalski is amazing. These are Uber makers. Autodesk has, I don't know how much they spent, but it's hundreds of millions of dollars jumping into this space. They've created an entire division around it. They're buying up companies. The biggest company they bought was a CAM software package for like $350 million because they realized that the CAM part of the software chain was the most broken, and the folks in that space were not making enough efforts to make it easy enough for makers to be able to use the software. So they basically said, forget this, we're not waiting, we're just gonna buy this company and start pushing it in the direction that it needs to go. Hundreds of millions of dollars. They just actually set aside $100 million just to fund startup 3D printing companies. They announced that like 2 days ago. We've got new brands like Etsy. Etsy's a wonderful platform. I think they're going to do like $1.7 billion in transactions this year. Mostly, Americans selling to other Americans or nationals selling to other nationals. Kickstarter's done over $1.4 billion in fundraising for different kinds of projects. Shapeways got spun out by Philips, and I think they had an $80 million round at a $200 million valuation. GE funded vets, I mentioned that. GE funds Quirky. Yeah, how much time have I got? I gotta make sure I got room for questions. GE's play in Quirky, the CMO at GE, Beth Comstock, is a genius. She's doing stuff in the space that most everybody else is terrified of. When they decided to start doing their Internet of Things project, they kind of gave it to her, and this was like in January over a year ago, and she sat down with the team and said, basically I realize it takes a long time to launch products at GE, but this year we're going to have a product on the shelf by Black Friday. Let's get cracking. This was January. And they had a product on the shelf by Black Friday, but they leveraged the Quirky platform. And then they had such a great experience, essentially using Quirky to drive the specification. Often the specification, when you're a big company, that takes a long time. You engage IDEO, you drop $5 million on it, takes 2 or 3 years, you really get to know the consumer. Or you can just engage Quirky, have 2,500 people collaborate, and you'll have your spec in 60 days. Which is what they did. They had a spec in 60 days. They then went straight to manufacturing in volume, and they were on, I think it was the Home Depot's shelves by Black Friday. They then went to Quirky and said, we're going to invest in you. And Ben said, I'm not really looking for money. And they said, no, really, we are going to invest in you. And so he took $80 million, and rumor has it, on a $2 billion valuation. Yeah, crafts and cranks. Make Magazine was spun out. Intel launched the Galileo and the Edison projects, which are absolutely phenomenal. They didn't quite get it right first generation, they'll admit that, but their second generation is locked on. We had Pelosi come in and say, I'm in awe of the maker movement. We had the White House Maker Fair, 2 new books. Did I mention my book? No boom for that, no. But we did have another book you got to read is David Lang's Zero to Maker. Phenomenal story about how he came into TechShop and having never made anything and then turned himself into an Uber maker. I don't think he's in my slide deck. So this is a guy, he came in, I met him day one, and he says, Mark, I lost my job recently, and I've convinced Dale Daugherty to let me write a column for Make Magazine called Zero to Maker, and it's going to chronicle my experience of becoming a decent maker. I don't know how long it's going to take, but that's what I'm going to do. And so he took every class we had, dropped like $3,500 over a 90-day period. And within, I would call it 6 to 9 months, now, so he starts with, Mark, I've never made anything. Then he backs up and says, well, tongue-in-cheek, that's not entirely true. I do really good email. 9 months later, he owned a robot company. It's an open ROV. It's the largest open hardware, remotely controlled underwater vehicle. They've sold 1,000 of them. He's got his own manufacturing facility in the East Bay. NASA's been involved. NOAA's been involved. He's got rogue scientists on both poles that are using, his on the side to run the robot under the glaciers and stuff. It's a great book. 2 new accelerators. This is kind of troubling to me. We have hundreds of accelerators globally for doing software. I mean, even telephone, like Orange, the telephone company in Europe, Orange, has like 40 accelerators themselves that don't accept hardware projects. There are about 5 hardware accelerators. 5. We're kind of under-accelerated on the hardware space right now. Most of them, by the way, launch next to a tech shop within 2 or 3 blocks. It's like, why in the world would I start an accelerator and drop $1.5 million on equipment when I can just send my teams there by opening close? So Lemnos Labs, PCH, the extension of Hackcelerate, Alpha Gear have all landed near us. But again, these are great indicators that things are really moving in the maker space. But now I'm going to start driving it home. That's the world's fastest electric motorcycle. It was built in our Menlo Park facility. It did 218 miles an hour on the Bonneville Salt Flats. Anything they couldn't buy off the shelf, they made themselves. It won Pikes Peak this last year. And I love this. It destroyed the Ducati Superbike. When was the last time you saw a professional race when the second place finisher came in 19 seconds later? 1, 2, 3. This guy had a brew and a massage by the time the Ducati came across. I've got this transportation theme going. Yes, Andy's actually working on a jetpack. Then you ask him, Andy, why? And he says, GM's not, Boeing's not. I mean, if somebody has to, somebody's got to do it. And so he's working on a jetpack. So I show this slide to the folks at NASA because we're close to Ames, and they giggle, right? And because they have real big boy tools and actual jets. And then we do a tour, and Andy happened to have an office space there, and he has a space suit in his office with a space pack on the back. And so they come to a screeching halt. It's like, what's this? It's like, well, Andy's serious. This is not a joke. He is trying to build jetpacks because nobody else is. And if you know anything about that kind of engineering, you reverse engineer all known prior art. I mean, you get your hands on it and you look at it. And I wish I was smart enough to stage these kind of things. At that moment, Andy comes around the corner, and he's got this little piece of plastic in his hand, and I say, hey, Andy, I want you to meet the NASA guys. They want to see your spacesuit. So they go in, they totally geek out about the spacesuit for a while. And then, and Andy's getting amped up, and he goes, hey, guys, these nozzles right here, the one that you've got on here, these 3D printing thing is allowing me to design nozzles that fully leverage Venturi effects, and you can't manufacture them any other way. There's no way you can do it with injection molding. You can't use mills or lathes, because of the math involved. You've got to get it. You've got to get every single vein to do it exactly right. And so I'm getting 8 times the airflow out of this than you guys are getting out of that. And I just did this on the 3D printer. It costs like $1. You guys are doing this, right? He's a consultant for NASA now. So Danny is a 17-year-old kid. He's a president of the robot club at Pali High School. He goes to his parents over the summer and says, hey, Mom, can you buy me a Segway? Yeah, that went over really well. No. Okay, if you're not going to buy me a Segway, how about a 3-month membership to TechShop and a materials budget, because I'll build my own. That'll keep the kid occupied. And so he did. So there's the Segway. By the way, his brother got a new bicycle out of the deal because he didn't ask permission to rip his brother's bike apart. It works. A gyro stack, the electronics, the welding. This kid is 18 years old. And then this is the upgrade. So this is the world's first 2-wheel self-balancing 18-mile-an-hour bar stool. At 18 miles an hour, you can outrun the cops. Yeah, we'll get some booms here in a minute. Sam was nuts. So we say that you can go through your own personal industrial revolution in 90 days. 90 days. You take every class, you spend 12 hours on site every day, and at the end of that, you will be able to prototype almost anything on the planet. This was Sam's first project. I don't recommend that. I would start with the laser cutters and make some jewelry or a thank you card. Sam built a lunar mining robot as his first project. Now, he was a chemical engineer, but he had never made anything. And so, he learned Arduino, he learned how to solder, he learned how to build the actuators and learned how to use the mill and the lathe. Now, he didn't win. It was a NASA X Prize type thing. He didn't win, but he did compete and successfully had the project out there. Roy was one of the first people I met at TechShop, and this is a remote-controlled video conference telepresence device. It's helping to improve the quality of care for nurses in remote areas in parts of the Netherlands and Ireland. They had a multi-million-dollar exit, sold the company early on. But I ran into him, and what he told me, he was one of my 3 kitchen table research. So the very first day I was there, I talked to 3 different entrepreneurial groups, and I asked them what they were doing and why. And each one of them told me 2 things. They had saved 98% of their development cost by coming to TechShop, and they wouldn't have done it if it didn't exist. And I'll show you something else that's helped change the world. This is a desktop diamond manufacturing device. Desktop diamond manufacturing device. So the staff comes to me and says, "Hey, Mark, you gotta talk to this guy." Because he's kind of interesting, and we got a pretty high bar. If they're going to come interrupt me, it's usually something interesting is happening. And so they take me over to meet Mike, And I said, hey, Mike, I'm Mark. And he was like, yeah, what are you doing? Building a desktop diamond manufacturing device. Right. Okay, how does it work? Oh, it's easy. All right, so you're dealing with a wacko. Now, is he a good wacko or a bad wacko, right? It's like, if desktop diamond manufacturing devices were easy, I would have one. Okay, Mike, I'll bite. How does it work? And I'm looking at, this is version 2. I'm looking at version 1. He had never milled anything in his life. And so this was his first prototype. And I asked him, what is this? He said, well, this is a high-pressure chamber. Okay. I look at it, and there are random gouges in the top from where the cutting tool cut in places it wasn't supposed to. High-pressure chamber, okay. What do you do next? Well, first you pump in 97% hydrogen into this port, and 3% methane into that port, and then you fire up a high-energy device and create a plasma ball of energy in the middle of it. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. And I'm slowly backing away from the table. It doesn't even have gas in it, and it's already scaring me. We call those frag grenades. Oh my gosh. And then he says, what the best part is? Like, I have no idea. It's like this right here. Oh, you can see it. That's the viewport so I can watch. He's growing diamonds in his garage, little small ones. Lots of CubeSats. So that was built in San Jose, and there it is, a photo from the Space Center, looking down over, I think it was the Indian Ocean. These are artists. You don't want to leave them out. They add spice to the community. This was one of our early successes. She took the laser cutter class. That's a knitting needle gauge. Evidently, if you're into knitting, you have a gauge, and so she makes them out of bamboo. She quit her six-figure-a-year software job because she was making way more money selling tchotchkes into the knitting business. Owns like 2 or 3 laser cutters, has a small business operating out of her garage now. Remarkable story. This is one of my favorites. Tina came in. She made a New Year's resolution. I think it was 3 years ago now. I'm going to learn how to make things because I haven't made anything since the popsicle stick project in 6th grade. Took the laser cutter class on a Wednesday night, scheduled to come in on Friday. On Thursday, she gets a call from her sister-in-law and says, hey, Bobby wants you to come to the birthday party on Saturday. Would you come? She says, sure, I'll come. What are you doing? Cakes, cupcakes? What are you doing? We're doing cupcakes. Perfect. Send me the names of all the kids, and I will cut out their name on the laser cutter, toll paint it, and every kid will get a cupcake topper as part of their grab bag at the end. And so she does it. She comes in on Friday, cuts them all out, toll paints them, shellacks them up, and on Saturday, all the kids show up, and she's hanging out. And at the end, the parents come in and go, wow, look at, Janie got this nice cupcake topper, but I got a problem. So I have 2 kids at home. She walked out with $200 in orders, not knowing she was in business. 1, 2, 3, boom. She recently came back from her 6-month-long honeymoon because when they had gotten married, she and her husband, couldn't afford to go on a honeymoon. But based on the hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, that she's generating on her Etsy site, she can now do pretty much anything that she wants. Lots of artists. I love this one because it's irritating to me that BMW, Ford, and others haven't bought it yet. So this is a self-regulating tire inflator. It's like you've got the sensors that will tell you the tire is low. I have an engine, I have batteries, I have generators. We have all the components there to compress air. I don't want to know my tire's low. I just want you to fix it. I never want to know about my tires. And so these guys they've raised something on the order of $20 million in venture funding so far. This is a 3D printing company. They started out as a club and then started building better 3D printers, and people started buying them. They formed a company. They're now selling, I think, 400 or 500 of them a month, have their own manufacturing facility in the East Bay. This one is amazing. So Max comes in. I see him out on the benches, and he's, I'm getting ready to do a Kickstarter campaign for my lamp. What are you looking for? $60,000. I was like, Max, you're going to get crushed. you're not going to raise $60,000 on Kickstarter for hardware. The average hardware is less than $2,500. And only half of those get funded. You know, why do you need that much? And he walks me through why he needs all that. And I go, okay, yeah, you do. You need 60 grand. And he says, yeah, I've got 6 weeks to do the build, and I'll make 100 a week for the 600 that I'm going to sell. Perfect. Yeah. So he sells 480 of them. I'm sorry, 4,800 of them. And has a small manufacturing problem. Raised $480,000. Holy cow. 10 years ago, I'm sorry, but a 24-year-old designer with 2 years experience at Macy's designing shelves is not going to raise $480,000 from anybody, including his parents or his grandmother, to launch a lamp company. It's not going to happen, but we do live in that age now. This was a collapsible kayak. I'm running out of time. Oh, we've seen that one. He came in and asked, what classes do I need to take to learn how to use the tools to launch an iPad company, iPad case company? 90 days later, he had sold $1 million in product. He didn't know how to use the tools, and he's had $1 million in orders. He did $4 million in the first year, $10 million the second, $30 million, $35 in the third. We think he's on track to do $65 million this year. And that's the President of the United States is his lead user. But none of those have changed the world. These have. Square came out of Menlo Park. That's that's James McKelvey. He's the guy that came up with it. Here's the background on this one. It's fascinating. Jack Dorsey and James McKelvey went to ostensibly the 10 smartest investors on the planet in the Bay Area, pitched them the idea for Square, and got turned down flat. Because Jack was a coder, and James is a glass blower from St. Louis. He's got a phenomenal studio there. You should visit it. I mean, he does amazing work. Then what happened is James came into our Menlo Park facility, not knowing anything about electronics, got the basic knowledge that he needed, leveraged our dream consultants, leveraged the community, and built. These are the original 3 prototypes. Went back to those 10 investors, instead of doing a PowerPoint slide, just basically walked up to a Vinod Koshal and said, give me your credit card. So Vinod pulls out his black American Express card, rips it through. He took $50 off each of the top venture capitalists. Boom, yes. 1, 2, 3, boom. I love that. He charged the VC for the presentation and raised $10 million in their Series A. They just got a $6 billion valuation. This is the world's most efficient data cooling center system. 2 electrical engineers designed, developed, and built it, destroyed IBM, Emerson, and others in a head-to-head competition, and licensed the technology to Emerson Electronics. This system reset the bar in the entire globe, in the industry globe, and we spend globally $250 billion a year cooling data centers. And this thing was like 8% more efficient than the best thing that Watson Labs could throw at it, and 15% better than Emerson, and like 50% better than most everybody else. This technology alone could save the globe $25 billion in electricity. 1, 2, 3, boom. Their total cost, $20,000. So BioLite, these guys won an award, Hardware Social Company of the Year. These guys have raised $20 million. They went through 4 prototypes, went from 2 engineers to 10 engineers in a Series A in about 14 weeks. And it's going to reduce the size of the runoff zone at the end of the Mississippi. They've raised $20 million. It was named one of the top 5 ag startups of the year last year. Another top 5 startup of the year, ag startup of the year. And then this is Embrace. And I love this. These kids came up with this idea at the D School. We have a great relationship with Stanford. So they came up with this idea at the D School. And Naganand is the chemist. And the idea is you put a pouch in the back, you heat it up, and it will extend the golden hour that a child has before they die to get to an incubator if they've got early medical problems. So it extended it by another hour. They got it, by the time they graduated, they got it to another hour. But here's what would have happened if Menlo Park didn't exist. This team got an award, Like, congratulations, you're now engineers. Go get a job. Right? Because they don't have access to the tools. To build the prototypes, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think the oldest one was him. He's like 24. No corporate experience whatsoever. But historically, they would have just gone out and gotten a job. Instead, they said, let's take the summer and see where we can get. They came in, sat down at the community, kept working on it. Naganon runs into a polymer chemist with 30 years of experience. They upgrade the core technology to 4 hours, and this blanket has saved 87,000 babies so far. 1, 2, 3, boom. Yeah. So here are the results in the Bay Area. What happens when you give the tools of the Industrial Revolution to the creative class for the cost of a Starbucks addiction? They change the world. 5 times so far. They create $12 billion in value, $2 billion in annual sales, $200 million in annual salaries, and 2,000 jobs. The state of California, on an annual basis, is pulling more out than we've invested in the entire Bay Area. So here's the challenge. So I got a 3D printer, because I have to have one, right? It's my job. I got it home, and I had to do a test print, and because you could get it all set up, I need a test print. I didn't have time to do a design, blah, blah, blah. So I go on the internet, hit Brie Pettis's other thing, what's it called? Thingiverse. So I go to Thingiverse, root around, and I find a rose design. It's like a perfect. My wife developed an allergy to roses like 5 years before. For a guy, that really sucks, because I'll roll in from LAX at like midnight, and I can hit the grocery store, grab some roses, go in, and I'm fine. Well, now that option's gone. She's not into chocolate, so I'm an idiot. I started doing Tiffany's. That's really expensive. And they're not open at midnight, so I actually have to plan and so forth. And so it's like, cool, I haven't given her a rose in 5 years. So I start the test print, and I go off and I do my conference call, fly the Excel spreadsheets. It comes up. It takes a little bit of cleanup, so I clean it up while I'm watching some news. Set it down, do another conference call. My wife walks in, at about 5:30 at night after a long day at work, and I go, hey, babe, I made you a rose. Yeah, so I gave it to her. Yeah, aw. Hero! Oh my gosh! It sits on our headboard because I made it. So here's my challenge, because there's something fundamentally different when a 39-cent test print is more valuable than a silver locket from Tiffany's. There's something else fundamentally going on. And so what I challenge you to do is to make something for a significant other and give it to them, and then think about the feelings, the emotion, the economic transaction that was associated with it that goes on, and then join the revolution next year. Thank you very much.